over exactly what it means, and I think sometimes we make it too difficult. We try to make too many hoops and too many steps to leap and jump through just being obedient to God. And so we kind of felt at the last minute, let's do this and make this available. I'm looking forward to it. Ironically, I say about we were planning it is because this is a change of plans. We had a order of service this morning, some songs to sing, and when we're going to speak and what the text was going to be on. We have some handouts that you picked up. We can't do that without, I can't show up on Sunday. As amazing as Val is of an administrator, I can't show up and say, guess what I'm preaching on at about 9:45. It's been planned before. We got a structure. I have a sermon series that we kind of are planned out now till the fall. Till the winter, actually, right on to Christmas. And so there's planning. It's been neat because there's been times where we're done Nehemiah 6, and the next week is Nehemiah 7, and there's something that happens in the community or in someone's life, and it happens to fit right in with that Nehemiah 7. It's not because we found out about it and we've got cameras outside their house and we're just preaching on what's in their life. It's just, it was next. And so that's the neat thing about planning. So it's important to have structure, but today it's also important to recognize that every now and then you got to change it up. You got to call an audible. And so that's what this was. But don't underestimate the power of structure and order. Now, nothing makes me realize and appreciate structure more than when I look at an x-ray. And not too long ago, my son Davis was playing lacrosse at high school and got slashed on the thumb. And this happened. Yeah, isn't that, I know, isn't that? I so geeked out on this. I was like, oh my goodness, can I get a picture of that? That's his right thumb. Finished off his high school trying to figure out how to write, and he had an iPad trying to figure out a little cast. You probably saw him. He got so tired of not being able to work. He even played on the worship team with the cast. You saw him, bright pink cast, playing. You started to see how everything, and they had like a zoom in. I took a couple pictures. It was also pretty cool. We went back a few weeks later, and they pinned it. Look at this. Look at that, eh? Because it was offline, and I now this is for free. I didn't plan on saying this, but some people think, you know what, time will just heal, and it's true. Time does heal, but not just time by itself. Some things need to be set straight before time can heal. You can't just say, well, I'll just give it time. Well, yeah, it would have healed. It would have healed the other way. You'd had a thumb that still, if you'd hitchhike, it was talking about going left. It needed attention. It needed to be dealt with. It needed to be set straight, and then it needed time to heal. So don't just assume that, sometimes think, I just need time. Well, no, if it's leading with we have grief share, we have divorce care, and there's Elisha House in the community that helps, there's counselors. There are people and professionals that can help you set some things straight, because just time doesn't do it. And so that was all for free. I hadn't planned on saying that at all. It had nothing to do with structure, but there you go. Now, in case you're wondering and you're thinking about proposing to your special loved one, and you think that putting a ring in the food is a good idea, that's probably not the best idea. And in case you're that grandma that decides to put the coin in the birthday cake, poor little gaffer, happy birthday. Now, this one got absolutely no idea how someone swallows a battery. So I know those have nothing to do with structure, but I was looking at x-rays and saw those and thought those would be a lot more fun to look at than just skeletal structures. We could not exist without structure and order. The human body is one of those most amazing machines on the planet. You think IKEA has a bunch of parts to it. Multiple billion of cells, different shapes and sizes and functions, large quantities of them doing completely different things at different times and at the same time, dependent of each other, unique in function, equal in existence. It's amazing just to walk how much mechanics are working. You find it out the older you get when some of them start to rust up and creak a little bit. We don't appreciate our structures. But for this to function the way it's supposed to function, there is structure. Psalmist says, I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and your works are wonderful. I know that full well. We have our bodies are built, not only the skeletal structure, but even the cellular structure, to work in tandem, in partnership, and in unison, in a harmony that's incredible. However, second law of thermodynamics, anybody know what it is? Things tend to disorder, decay, wear out. How many can testify to the second law of thermodynamics in your body right now? What's going on right here is the second law of thermodynamics. I feel it usually when I'm pushing myself a little bit, wrestling with the kids, have a game of basketball, and I'm like, whoop, a little bit of thermodynamics, second law going on in my back this morning. We don't appreciate the order and our structure of things unless we lose them. My brother Kevin is preaching today for the first time in 7 weeks in his church in Burlington because he has had disc problems in his back, literally almost paralyzing him. He spent 3 weeks in a row without moving from his right side on a bed in the hospital. It's like he got shot. That was 7 weeks ago, and he's been home, he's waiting, he's had MRIs, he's waiting, and he's got to have back surgery. It's, I don't even know, that it was not just a herniated disc, it's like a pulverized disc. We don't realize how much we need every little piece working in its place until one of them slips. Only seem to take notice of how marvelous order is when things go chaotic. Cancer. Right now, we've been praying for Pastor Claude in Vineland, and right now there's a missionary there. We're still helping out with some worship. Brian Faders, I believe they're leading worship today from our church, and we've been helping out, sending people to care for preaching the word and leading in worship there. Pastor Claude got another report, and he's got to start a series of treatments for cancer and radiation, brain cancer and a tumor. So there's a number of people that we know that face cancer. And what cancer is, it's quite interesting actually. It's the body's own cells doing what they're supposed to do, but doing it not in their orderly fashion they were designed to do it in. It's cells in the body that then start to go rogue and grow and eventually take over the body to the point where it destroys the body, and then it itself is destroyed along with the body. Order. God is a God of structure and order. We don't have to examine nature and the skies. We can even just look at a tree. Edward Everett, back in the 1700s, early 1800s, had an illustration. He says, we ask the leaf, are you complete in yourself? And the leaf answers, no, my life is in the branches. We ask the branch, and the branch answers, no, my life is in the trunk. We ask the trunk, and it answers, no, my life is in the root. We ask the root, and it answers, no, my life is in the trunk, and the branches and the leaves. Keep the branches stripped of leaves, and I shall die. So it is with the great tree of being. Nothing is completely and merely individual. Imagine life without order. What if the law of gravity couldn't be counted on? You would all look pretty interesting right today. 1 minute up, then the next minute down. Literally. You couldn't plan anything. How about where you're supposed to go, how to stop your car? What if there's no order, for instance, to our banking institutions? Billions of dollars could disappear in the collapse of thousands of savings and mortgages. No, sorry, that's not, it's a squirrel moment there. I'm not planning anything, just in case somebody is wanted to report me. What do we talk about? Order is necessary. Now, I get it. I mean, when I was younger, and we do something that's in our staff called a Berkman assessment. It's like a personality behavioral assessment, and we do it to help us in teamwork. And to appreciate all of us are made differently and function differently and filter things differently. And there's one that talks about structure and unstructure. How many people here, you prefer something to be structured? Let me see your hand. How many are here, and when you go on holidays, do you say to your spouse, can we just not plan one day? Let me see that. Come on. Yeah, you're like, see? So now I tend to be an unstructured person. Now you might say, but Pastor Jamie, you've got a handout. Yeah, well, I've socialized myself. I realize not everybody's like me. There are some people sitting there that they need to know, where is he going with this? Oh, I see. I think this is this point right here. There are other people, when I say, when I'm getting off my notes, they go, oh, good. He's getting off his notes. This is going to be the good part. Some people structured, some people unstructured. But don't underestimate structure. Whether you like it or don't like it, we need it. And the body of Christ is no different than that body on the screen. God created our bodies physically with a structure that holds everything together and works in cooperation to accomplish something with coordinated effort. And He desires His body, the church, to function in the same way, working together in harmony and coordination for a common effort. God is not against planning or structure. And I know sometimes people have said in maybe Pentecostal churches or charismatic churches, or said of people that are in Pentecostals, that they don't have any order. We have order. But, as a perfect example today, we're happy to have something and an order to stray from and come back to. So we didn't throw the whole plan out, and because we changed one thing by doing extra baptisms after the service, we didn't go, forget the plan then. We'll just forget planning if we're just going to have a baptism and do it. No, we have a plan. We're always ready for God at any time from the sideline. He's not the sideline. From the upper booth, as He's looking down, He calls in an audible, and God says, you know what, we're going to change it up just a little bit. You go here, you go there. Sounds good, God. You're the one that has the ultimate say. So, let's get to it. Chapter 11, verse 1. We're going to get some structure, and then we're going to lead it to the conclusion of the service where we're going to have an opportunity to celebrate some baptisms. I was supposed to get an update. Awesome. We got 3 extra baptisms this morning. Isn't that awesome? Yeah. Now the leaders of the people settled in Jerusalem, this new city, new walls, fresh security, excitement, a fresh revival in their spirit for the things of God. The rest of the people cast lots to bring 1 out of every 10 of them to live in Jerusalem, the holy city, while the remaining 9 were to stay in their own towns. Jerusalem can now again be called the holy city. It was a unique model of God's kingdom. The model city comprised of the rulers and also a tithe, kind of interesting, of people from every nation, all the tribes, all the different nations. We're going to send 1 out of every 10 to live in the main city. Who is going to be living there? Well, all of us are going to live there. We'll send some. Lots were cast. Now, lots means just kind of draw straws, if you want. It's a form of a way of choosing, but it's not just chance because they committed that process to God. It's the difference between just chance and God speaking. It's the same way when they were selecting a replacement for Judas in the New Testament. They chose a system, but they put together 2 names that they were highly honored and respected among the people, and then they cast lots. But before they did that, they prayed. Say, God, direct this. And that's what makes the difference. This was not just chance. It's something they believed God was speaking in. So they would draw lots. Who gets it? Okay, I guess I'm going to Jerusalem. We're moving. Many of those the lot fell on proved to be financially downturned. I mean, you had to leave where you were. How many of you have picked up and moved in your life more than 5 times? You've moved more than 5 times. How many more than 10 times? Yeah, there's some more. There is some pastors' homes here. No, I'm just kidding. But how many, more than a dozen? More than a dozen. You move more than a dozen times. There's a lot of people move, yeah. Some of you, I bet you some of those are the unstructured people. They're like, I've been here for more than a year and a half. I got to get moving. This is like... Picking up and moving can be kind of destabilizing. Different friends, different groups, different loved ones. And everything you've had, your support system is changed. You have to make new friends. Some things were considered by these people to be challenging, I would imagine, in the move. Nehemiah directed this petition for movement into the city of God. He knew that this new place with new walls, new security, needed momentum, needed to grow. And so the first thing they did the growth internally and very calculated. People were going to invest themselves into it. The community, verses 2 and 3. What I love about this is that not only were those people that were drawing straws, and okay, you got to go, you got to go, you got to go, but there were some when they started that process that interrupted the process by volunteering to go. The people commended all who volunteered to live in Jerusalem. These are the provincial leaders who settled in Jerusalem. Now some Israelites, priests, Levites, temple servants, and descendants of Solomon's servants lived in the towns of Judah, each on their own property in the various towns, while other people from both Judah and Benjamin lived in Jerusalem. People started to volunteer. They didn't wait for the lucky chance lot to fall on them. They just made themselves available. I like this. Volunteer. There are always some people who don't have to be drafted, who don't have to be kicked or pushed or prodded, but they're just willing to step up and meet the need. Sometimes the problem is if a church has enough of these, then everybody else doesn't feel the need to step up. The rest of Israel's response was rejoicing. Volunteers. People ready to go, ready to say, here am I, send me. Spurgeon shares an illustration. He talks about when the Spartans marched in advance of the cheerful songs, willing to fight, but when Persians entered into conflict, you could hear the regiment's cracking of whips, forcing their officers to fight. No wonder few Spartans were more than a match for thousands of Persians, Spurgeon said. In fact, they were like lions in the middle of sheep. So let it be with the church. Never should she be forced to action, but may she be encouraged to move forward on her own. Because these people volunteered, not as many people had to be chosen by lots. You've probably heard the statistic about churches. I've heard everything from 20% do all the work and 80% for the 80%, or 10% do 90% of the work. I don't know what the statistic is, but I do know it's a challenge sometimes to get people to commit to serve. And so in a way of just honoring, in the same way of rejoicing those, this morning, we had a volunteer because that tank out there came from Southridge Welland, who's now in a new place over by Jean Vanier. And so I was talking to the pastor, and he said, well, we have one, and we want to do baptisms. We have the setup here. And so he said, you can borrow ours. Not only did they send us their tank, they sent us their guy. The guy that knows how to set it up and tear it down. And their guy asked if we could have anybody that could help them. And so we just put the word out, and I appreciate Ben. Ben said, I'll come and help Pastor Jordan. So this morning, Ben showed up with Jordan, and they put the tent together. Southridge's guy, and we had a guy, and Pastor Jordan putting it together. Volunteers. Yesterday, we had a celebration of life for Caroline McGinnis. Someone who spent many years making sandwiches for funerals just like the one yesterday. And when we needed somebody, Pat said, you know what, I'll do that. I can help out. I'll step up and do that. She wasn't able to get anybody else, and one that normally helps her, Sharon, wasn't able to do it that day. But so she got her friend from outside the church to come and help prepare sandwiches for Carolyn McInnes. There's always people that will step up. We recognize we're doing our vision process, and we're at the time right now of just working on some logos and some looking forward to revealing our directions and our initiatives as we head into the fall. But one thing, and I've said this before, we recognize as we talked about one of your concerns, and one of our concerns, whether it's leadership, staff, board, congregation, whoever filled it out, team leaders, there was a concern that we would have enough people to do the work that we needed to do. We saw the potential. We saw what we need to do and how great the work is, but we recognized and had a concern about who is going to do that work. Nehemiah 11 shows the example of a few people that were just said, you know what, I'll go. Commitment in its genuine servanthood way is contagious. Speaking of service, the next one's interesting. The company. There was a company created of 468 able men called the descendants of Perez. 468 able men, or outstanding, or strong, or of valor. I would title these the warriors. Why? Because a holy city still needs warriors. You remember how much the enemy tried to attack, right? I mean, the enemy was going after these people all the time, whether trying to discourage them or physically, literally threaten them or their lives or distract them. And so Nehemiah recognized that even though now we have strong walls, this city once had strong walls and was a strong city, and it decayed. So we need to put some things into place to prevent it from decay and to prevent it from destruction in the future. Warriors. And let me say, the church still needs people that are warriors to contend for the faith. As Jude 3 says, I urge you, contend for the faith that was once for all entrusted to the saints. We need God-given militia fighting the enemy. Oh, the weapons are not weapons of this world. They fight with the weapon of truth to combat the lies. You heard Pastor Call doing that a few minutes ago. Fight with prayer, fight with fasting. You heard an invitation not too long ago of a prayer team. There's people that meet every week during the week for prayer, ladies' prayer. Men meet on Friday mornings for prayer. We also have an invitation for those who want to put a schedule together for a prayer team on Sunday morning that would meet after greeters, worship team, all kind of meet in a huddle, and we just pray together and commit the day to God. And you meet part of that, and then go and take a few minutes and just pray for the whole service. Pray for the pastors, the worship team, for you, the people coming, for people in the community that may come to church for the first time. We need some people that would be warriors, that would pray to advance the kingdom of God and to hold back. We now have 5. 5 people are getting baptized. Yeah, I'm getting like updates on my... Ginger's one. Yeah, so that's... I could fill that tank probably if it's not quite full right now, but. Okay, so verse 7. God called out some to supervise and oversee the spiritual vitality of the people, the called. In verse 9, we have a man called Joel, a chief officer, and then another one serving in a different district by the name of Judah, a suburb of the holy city. The term used, chief officer or overseer, it's kind of the role of an elder in the New Testament church. He called out some people to be elders in the holy temple, to supervise and oversee spiritual concerns. Note there were several of these men. In verse 11, there's also Sariah, chief supervisor. He's kind of like the pastor, not chief officer, but chief supervisor. Several associate pastors are like kind of named there. It's a big section. And may I say here, I still believe in God calling people to a role in the church of caring for the spiritual needs of his people. I still believe in that. I believe that God has got a plan for all of us, and I don't believe that all of us are meant to be pastors or worship pastors or Bible college teachers. But I believe that we all serve God wherever we are. We can serve God swinging a hammer, cutting grass, welding steel together, and we can do it in a way that brings honor to him. But I also believe that there is a need in our world today for God to continue to call people to be overseers and caregivers for the spiritual needs of the church. And God does that by literally speaking to individuals. In the same way, he just encourages you, whether you're sitting here and you're saying, you know what, I need to get baptized, I want to do, and God just gives you that. The reason why, last night, it was literally, I texted a call last night at about 11:15 and said, I'm feeling like, bring your baptism stuff, because I feel like we should do the baptism and just invite anybody to do it. I'm going to bring some extra towels. And it's just listening to that kind of small voice, just in your own life, what you do. But God continues to speak as he does that way and calls you to say, I'd like you to dedicate your life to me. Go wherever you go to care for the spiritual needs of people. In a greater sense, I still believe in God calls individuals into ministry. And if God is speaking to you about going into ministry, in fact, today, in one of the baptisms, Irma Joy has joined our congregation a little while ago, and God has given her a call for ministry, and she does a ministry in one of our nursing homes, and one of the daughters of one of the guys that live in the nursing home wanted to get baptized, and so she's one of the people getting baptized today. And Irma Joy is doing the baptism. She does the services at the nursing home. God still calls people. We've got at least 3 elders here in various territories, a chief, a senior pastor, a lead pastor, if you will, and some assistant pastors, all serving God together. So important. The church needs people who will lay aside egos and agendas and seek the mind of Christ together. That's been the goal of our vision process. Leadership and staff. And let me tell you, we are blessed with the leadership of the staff that genuinely want God's plan for today and tomorrow for this church. I appreciate working alongside the staff and leadership that we have, their willingness to serve and care and go above and beyond. Yesterday, the funeral was an example of that. The way they work together, even putting VBS on this week, many of them involved in different ways. We've had to shift baptisms. 6. Yeah. Actually, call texted me, 6, sorry. Okay, I'll forgive you. The more we start adding these up, the more I better get this sermon done. Okay. Let's move on. Custodians. Some were put in charge of the outside work of the house. This is like the deacons. They literally were in charge of everything else, the facilities, keep the supplies on site. This is a less glamorous job, but it was to take care of the details. The reason is so that the other leaders would focus on the spiritual needs of the people. They were in charge of the practical. All of it, though, even though it was less glamorous and maybe behind the scenes, very important part of the structure, And in verse 17, there is very much a part of the praise and thanksgiving of the body of Christ. It's like the body goes, look, I feel so good today. The reason I feel good, because everything is in place doing its part. I want to honor some of our deacons. I think of one particular, and not to be, but I got to be careful. I'm just trying to give you examples. I'm not trying to be exhaustive in my thanks this morning, but I had one deacon who he had served for a deacon, and we had deacon and deaconesses, people who have served the board, and he had served a term, and his term had come up, and it's possible for him to be available to serve in the leadership as a deacon for another 3 years, but he didn't leave his name stand. Came to me and said, Pastor, I have found that while I've been serving as a deacon, I have really been able to, I've taken responsibility for the building and managing some of the cares and the needs of the facilities. And he says, you know what, he was an electrician in the past, and he says, I really feel like I can serve God well by just caring for the facilities. Better and let someone else serve God around the table. I thought, what a pure heart to serve God in the place where God's called you. I was Mike Kirby, and he's done a great job the last couple of years. All the time, he gives a report every week to our board meetings of just how the building's going. And I mean, we have a lot of stuff that needs to get upgraded and fixed and worked on. And he's done such a good job overseeing, getting quotes, the patching in the parking lot that's happening, and just serves and cares for the facility. And because he's doing that, it has taken so much of a burden off of me in the office of trying to just get a quote from this guy, meet that guy out in the parking lot, to be able to, he does it and does it well. There's others, those who worked in the flower beds today. You'll see when you walked in, the flower beds changed, the mulching, a group got together, cared for that. There was others that were called gatekeepers. I think those are interesting. These ones, they're similar to kind of what I would think would be ushers. They lived on the hill near Ophel, near the temple area. And the chief usher, Ziha and Gishpa, I think they're almost like head ushers or the treasurer or the secretary. This is like the signing officer. Our signing officers right now are Martin Cuse and Dave Shurton. Dave's at Braeside Camp right now. They're our signing officers. They're the ones, and we have, and in case you ever want to know, I'd be happy to show you our financial policies, but we have a very strong and stringent kind of checks and balances for how things are counted. I appreciate the counting team that comes in on Monday and does the deposits and fills things out. We have always a buddy system to make sure that nobody's ever in a vulnerable place with money that's not been counted, but also being a good steward with the money and being accountable with it as well. And so we're appreciative of those people that care for and operate as honored as ushers and greeters and counters and bookkeeper. We have an independent bookkeeper outside of the office and outside of the church that does a lot of our bookkeeping, and so thankful for that. The choir, a regular worship team led by Uzi, a descendant of Asaph, was established. Remember Asaph? I mean, he's like that famous guy in David when David's writing all the Psalms by Asaph. And so this is like Asaph's grandkid who has now been appointed the new choir director. Why would a king give portions, and why would a king provide for a choir? Well, typically, many times the subdued people would sing praises and choirs would lead of the king. And so what the good part of that ended up not only singing praises to that king, but that king. Music is a major part of our worship experience here as well. And although you might see a worship song here on a Sunday, or 2 or 3 or 4, and the lights and the words and the song and the transition and the keys, there is a lot of preparation and practice that goes into that. It's important. It enhances our worship experience. Appreciate Pastor Jordan, the worship team. They come here early, 8 o'clock on Sunday mornings. They're here on Thursday practicing till late to prepare for today. We don't see that. We get to experience worship on Sunday morning. We don't appreciate necessarily, unless you're there, all of those behind scenes. But all that has an order to it, a contribution. So what a plan. Elders, deacons, ushers, spiritual warriors, now musicians. There's a few other unique roles before we close. The communicator, this one's really neat. If you're going to get one, I mean, these all sound like, but I love this one. Pethahiah. Well, I mean, that's a kind of a, verse 24, I mean, I kind of like it as well, because I Pethahiah. Pethahiah was to be a mediator between God's people and King Artaxerxes. A unique post. An actual role, job description is not clear, except for the fact that he was to be relating to both and helping both relate. Kind of an official representative, an ambassador. Paul talks about us and says we are to be Christ's ambassadors. The church needs more ambassadors. People who will represent God to the world and the world to the people of God. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean we need people who are going to be good representatives in this world of what it means to be a Christ follower, a good ambassador. Don't be a bad ambassador. If you're going to, well, you know what I mean. Sometimes we are our own worst enemies and bad advertising. We need good ambassadors. And okay, that one makes sense. But what do you mean, Pastor Jamie, when you say we need people to be ambassadors and for the world to the people of God? Why? So that we stay relevant, so that we understand and know that there are people that when we do and say some things, and we do and we say them, people have no clue what we're talking about, or we're miscommunicating ourselves. We need people that can help us understand that when, especially if you have been in the church for a long time and you've done this for a long time, you start to forget what it's like to be normal in a world that is normal. And I'm not trying to, because some of the things we say aren't normal anymore. And when we do them and say them, people go, what planet are you from? Now, I'm not saying change the gospel. I'm just saying if you're going to speak to somebody, you need to speak the same language. Now, I can tell you right now, and what has helped me is my kids. I can see somebody doing a little dance, and I know their kid plays Fortnite. Or I know if someone's, whether it's Starbucks or I pay attention to the news, Billy Graham said we should preach the gospel as a preacher with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. We need to stay relevant. We need to understand what's going on in our world today. We need ambassadors that will represent God to the people and people to God. What is particularly interesting in this is not just the fact that he's an ambassador, but what I love about this, if you remember, there was a group of individuals that had left the ways of God, had let their spiritual life go, and had disobeyed God, had sinned, and made some big mistakes. And we know that, remember in the past, and some of them, when they read the law, they realized that they had gotten off track. You remember that some of those people that got off track were actually priests. And we know pastors can make mistakes too. And even leaders can get off track. Pethahiah was one of those ones that had messed up. One of those ones that made a mistake. And was called out for it and pointed by Ezra in Ezra 10 and 23. But here he is. After now, he said, I messed up, I made a mistake, I got off track, but now I am back on track, and I'm going forward. And so now he is put in a position as an ambassador, someone who can understand what it is to be without God and make mistakes, but understand what it is to know grace as well. What a perfect posting for someone who's made a mistake, huh? Making your mistake, God can use even our getting off track to put us in the exact place where we need to be to serve him. The casting, and we got two more. And then we get the baptism. Verse 25 to 30. The rest of God's people spread out. The rest of God's people scattered abroad. They even went beyond the old borders. Now, man, I'm trying to move this along quick. I can't say enough about this. We have built our own borders sometimes, and we need some people in this church to go past old borders. Otherwise, we get stuck in the same old rut again. There were some people that said, you need to move and live outside. Go. Get out of here. Spread out. It was not, let's build the city, let's build the wall. And at the very beginning, Nehemiah knew, we got a nice city, we got a nice wall, but we cannot afford to just all huddle up inside this wall. And so he, in the very beginning, built a system. Let's populate the city, and that's great. But everybody else, it wasn't about the 1% that were coming here. It's about that everybody else spreads out. Because we cannot afford to huddle up in our little church as little Christian huddles. The church could learn from this. Life should not be in occupying the church. Life should be in spreading out. The Great Commission, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the uttermost parts of the earth. There's a great mystery in roots, and if you go into a forest, it's quite incredible, actually. I was reading up about it, a scientific article, prepared a study. They were trying to examine and try to figure it out. They really don't have it all understood of why and how it happens. But roots in a forest can go down into the ground. They spread out. When they touch, there is something that is built. There's a fungi that's built that prevents them from fighting against one another. Not only that it can even take different trees, and instead of them fighting for the same nutrients and the same provisions and water, it can actually share it. So roots of different trees join and can share sunlight, benefit, nutrients, water to exist. Spread out, yes. But even though we spread out, there's a root system and a base that keeps us connected and growing strong. Finally, cosmopolitan. Those from the tribe of Benjamin lived in the territories of other tribes. One little small, Benjamin was small, and they lived in all the different tribes. What was happening was it was becoming a melting pot, becoming a cosmopolitan. I love pastoring this church, and one of the things I love about this church, and I've told people when I describe her, is that we are so diverse. We have people from all over the world. Friends from Jamaica, Africa, South America, European, Newfoundland. I got Newfoundland in there. We're so diverse. But we are the church. Different countries, different nations, different backgrounds, different education. We've grown up, some of you grew up here, some of you didn't grow up here, but that's what makes it great. We are different, but we're not meant to be counterparts. We're meant to be complementary to one another. And the way that happens is we have to calibrate, we have to connect. A healthy church is not without conflicts, it's not without challenges, but we deal with them in a way to contribute as a whole. So this holy city, a place set apart, a holy place, a set apart place, a set apart people that would live in the place and live abroad, and a set apart position for everyone to find their place in this holy place. What a perfect description of the church, his body. So let's move us together as one body, fulfill the plans of Christ, who is our head. A healthy church. One of the things that we've found very clear, and God is speaking to us to return to enhance, to magnify as our efforts as we move forward, is to become a discipling and a training and developing church. That we are not, you would come as you are, but you should not be still as you are tomorrow. Be a part of seeing you grow and change. That's what discipling is. Come the way you are, but leave changed. What can we do as far as in that training and discipling program and plan? The commission to go into all the world, make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So it's kind of neat that we have the baptism this morning. We want to help you find your place in serving God, being set apart to Him. So as a close of the service, really, and just as the final close, is just to be a part of these God stories and testimonies. It's going to feel a little bit weird. If you got kids in kids' church, you can go get them and join us for the remainder of it. But we are literally going to just put on some worship music. If you can grab me something there, Craig. And we're going to end, kind of go out like a wedding. You know how they all go out and chase and find the groom and the bride to try to tell them congratulations? That's what we're going to do. We're going to end the service out front by the tank. So we've got a little sound thing out there, and they can hear you. Just, if you got kids, go and get them. Everybody else, out front. We got some God stories. Bless you as you go. I'll close the service from the tank at the end of the baptism.